For the New Orleans Saints, it all comes down to this. Saints and Falcons on Sunday in the Superdome. This is the Saints Insider Podcast. We'll dive into that matchup, the consequences of winning or losing for the Saints and possibly their coaching staff, and much more around the NFL. I'm Zach Ewing. That's Rod Walker, Luke Johnson, Jeff Duncan. Welcome in, everybody. Do us a favor. Say it right from the top. Hit the subscribe button below. It's free. Costs you nothing. Just a half second of your time. And lots of you watching are not subscribed, so we would appreciate you clicking down there. Hit the subscribe button, and while you're at it, the like button too. All right, guys. This is our last game preview of the regular season, at least. We'll find out predictions later on if we think the Saints will win, if we think the Saints will get in. I'm kind of emotional. We've been through the whole season of Saints Insider Podcast.
Emotional, really?
You were the one who couldn't wait to start, man.
I know, but emotion. Wow.
Well, I'll wipe away the tear from your eye, man.
Yeah.
No,
I thought, like, where's Robert at with all the candy and, Kool-Aid and all the stuff that we had?
Yeah, we should have had we'll be back next week regardless.
We've drank enough Kool-Aid this season, I feel like.
Yeah, there'll be plenty to talk about as we move on. Saints Insider is sponsored by Bank Plus. Their banking decisions are actually made here in New Orleans by local bankers who know the community and take the time to know you. From small business to big business, home loans to bank anywhere technology, Bank Plus is here for New Orleans. Learn more at bankplus.net. Where do we want to start, guys? Saints Falcons.
You're the host.
It just feels like it was always going to come down to this. We've been saying it for weeks, and now here we are. And there's the other factor of the Saints needing help, but it just kind of felt right.
Yeah, but I think I always thought it was going to come down to these two teams. The winner of this game got the division. Tampa kind of snuck up on me. I think they had a much better season than I was anticipating. But you're right, though. It always felt like, from early on in the season, it felt like this Week 18 game was going to be very important for the Saints, and sure enough, it is. And I think for a lot of reasons. Obviously, they've got to win to even have a chance of making the playoffs, but you could give Dennis Allen his first winning season. You could have the Saints end by winning 4 out of 5 and make you feel a little bit better about where they're at. There's a lot of reasons that this one is really important for them.
Yeah. Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we talk about the beginning of the season. I don't know if I thought it was going to come. I thought the Saints were going to win this division before the season started. So I don't know if I really thought it was going to come down to this last game. But like Luke said, these are the two teams that I think we all thought were the best two coming into the season. I don't think any of us had Tampa Bay. I thought Tampa Bay would finish last in the division. Actually, that's how bad I thought they were. And like Luke said, they just kind of made that run, and they're in the driver's seat now.
Yeah, let's give credit to the league schedule makers because they got it right on this. There's a lot on the line here. Two rivalry, a big rivalry game. All the storylines with so many people from New Orleans in the Falcons organization. It's going to be a fun atmosphere. It's so much better than if the Saints were eliminated and we were at a half-filled dome with nothing to play for. This should be fun, dramatic theater regardless of who wins.
And there is still a chance that the winner does win the division. They just need Tampa Bay to lose to 2-14 Carolina, which I don't think it's some sort of crazy long shot that happens. The betting line will tell you it's not a long shot. It's like 2-1. Carolina does not often get blown out. They did last week. But I think they're going to be in that game in the second half and at least kind of keep things interesting as we go on.
Did they beat Tampa in the first match?
No, it was 21-18.
Yeah, 21-18.
So they played them tough. Yeah. I'll be stunned if Tampa loses. It'll be one of the all-time choke jobs in NFL history, in my opinion.
That's in NFL history?
Yeah. Just to lose the division, having it a home game against the team you already beat.
No, they're on the road. I think they're in Carolina.
No, I meant last week. All you had to do is win one of them.
I got you.
And you would have lost 2 games, to win the division, and you're favored in both. To me, it's pretty.
The only reason I'll push back on that being like an all-time choke job is because I don't think the Bucs are that good.
Well,
it's not like you're
true.
talking about a really good team throwing away an opportunity. You're talking about a 500 team at best, sort of ending up not being good enough.
Philadelphia Eagles this year is almost a choke job.
Yeah, if they had lost a couple more games, which they were very close to losing to Kansas City and Buffalo, and you were going to Philadelphia talking about missing the playoffs, that'd be a choke job. But I just think like Tampa Bay's not that great. And this kind of thing happens in Week 18 every year. Somebody loses who needs to win to get in. I'm I'm not saying it's going to be the Bucs. It could be Jacksonville. It could be Pittsburgh. It could be, like somebody needs to win to get in, and they just can't get it done against a team that has nothing to play for. So that's what the Saints and Falcons have to hope. Meanwhile, for this game, obviously they got to take care of their own business. We've heard the Saints say it all week long, like, hey, can't worry about any of that. We have to win our game or none of it matters, and that's true. So looking at the betting line for this one, the Caesar Sportsbook has the Saints as 3-point favorites. The total is 42. Seems about right. Like, I mean, I just think if we stack up these rosters, and we're going to dig into it, but like on paper, the Saints are at home. They're at least as talented of a team. They have the more accomplished quarterback. All those things. They're playing better right now. Saints should be favored.
Yeah, I think so. And we'll get into this later with predictions, but I think this one comes down to the quarterback. Derek Carr has been playing really, really well lately. I think his pass rating in the last 3 games is like 116, completing almost 75% of his passes in that stretch. He's been playing really efficient with the football. And on the flip side, you've got Taylor Heineke, who's banged up a little bit. He's coming off a 3-interception game against the Bears. He's not the guy you want to pin your team's hopes on, right? So I think, to me, those two factors, or the two players that playing the most important position on the field, are really the deciding factor for me in this game. It's why I feel pretty comfortable picking the Saints in this game. Falcons obviously have a very strong rushing attack. I think they've topped 200 against the Saints in 3 straight games. But if the Saints offense actually gets going, if they don't squander their opportunities in the red zone like they did the last time they played, then it makes it a little bit harder for the Falcons just like lean hard on that rushing attack.
Yeah, I think the Saints deserve some credit. They are playing better. They've won 3 out of 4. Jeff, they've kind of done, going into December, we sort of said this is what they have to do. They're going to have to find a way to win 4 games. And now it may turn out that even if they do that, they don't make the playoffs. But they are sort of trending in the right direction at the end of the year here.
Yeah, they kind of did this last year too. They kind of put it together late. I thought the Bucs game was their best overall game of the year, considering the opponent, the stakes, and everything involved, and they really dominated that game. And I think Luke makes a good point. To me, how this game has to be played from the Saints' perspective, I think they had the right plan when they went to Atlanta. They knew they needed to get up on them and force them into a passing attack and not let them lean on that running game. And they had the plan and going the right way, right? Did they kick a field goal on the
3-0 lead, and they had third
and they're
goal.
down in the red zone, and they get the pick 6 the other way. If they get up there 10-0, it's a totally different game. Instead, they're down 7-3. They've been dominating, and they're losing. And I'm sure that's what Dennis Allen's going to be emphasizing this week is let's start fast like we did in Tampa. That game changed so quickly once the Saints drove down and got a lead and kind of forced Tampa to play catch-up. Can they do it? I don't know, but that's got to be the plan again this week. And if you can get them passing the ball with Taylor Heineke, I watched the game against the Bears. He threw 2 miserable interceptions in that game, just bad. You don't want him trying to win the game if you're Atlanta. They've got to lean on the running game.
Yeah, it's kind of his MO is just he'll throw like 3 or 4 balls in a game that you can pick off, you can take advantage of. So especially if the Saints get him in that position where they are a pass-first team, that's put all the chips in on the Saints at that point.
Just before we started recording, the Falcons had their press conference after their practice, and Taylor Heineke is going to be a game-time decision, they say, questionable for the game with his ankle injury. So it could be Desmond Ridder, but he's the same. Desmond Ridder actually a little more mobile, but he'll throw a couple balls every game where you can pick it off, too.
The Saints had Tyrann Mathieu had 2 picks.
Yeah.
I think both of them he was like, thank you, Desmond Ridder.
Yes.
Throwing it right to me.
It was pretty bad. Quick check of the scenarios before we dig into the game, just to reiterate. In the NFC South, if the Bucs beat the Panthers, Tampa Bay is the division champ. If they lose, then the Falcons-Saints game becomes the division championship game. Either way, the Falcons would win in a 3-way tie. Saints would win it outright. And just in case anybody's wondering, like if there's ties, because this is the NFC South and you never know, if the Bucs tie and the Saints win, the Saints just need to do better than whatever the Bucs do. So whatever the Bucs do, they just need. If it's a tie, they need to win. If the Bucs lose, the Saints tie, they're in. So that's the scenario for the wild card. A little more complicated. Saints need to win and have both Seattle lose to Arizona and Green Bay lose to Chicago. I don't know. We talked about this on Wednesday, Rod, and you said you thought the wild card was a little more realistic. I think it's the division just because you only need help from one source instead of two. But either way, a lot of scoreboard watching on Sunday.
Yeah, we'll definitely be watching the scoreboard. I know last year I guess it was 2 years ago, I was kind of, my whole column was just a timeline of, what's going on at each moment, during the day. And it's always intriguing. I mean, it'll go back and forth. There'll be some times, I'm sure, when, they play the second game, though, the
wild card.
The wild card's the second game, so
if
if the Saints win, they'll still be alive going into that afternoon window.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's going to be an interesting Sunday across the NFL. I mean, there are a lot of teams that are still in the playoff hunt, despite us being in week 18 of the season. So.
Yeah, that game you mentioned 2 years ago was against the Falcons. It was in Atlanta, and the Saints ended up winning it. And for a long time, looked like they were going to get the help they needed from the Rams. But the 49ers come back, win that game, get into the playoffs, keep the Saints out. Obviously, Saints haven't been to the playoffs since.
The year the Rams won the Super Bowl, they couldn't take care of business in week 18 to help the Saints out.
Yeah.
Although, if you remember, that was in that game, Taysom Hill suffered a Liz Frank injury, and he was the starting quarterback that game. So they would have had to start Trevor Siemian in the playoffs. So, we wouldn't be talking about a 2-year playoff drought right now, but we'd probably be talking about the drought of them winning a playoff game.
Trevor Siemian's still hanging around, man. I think he's going to start for the Jets on Sunday.
Yeah, I like Trevor Siemian. Just, not exactly who you want to count
Not
on
a
to win
playoff caliber
game.
quarterback, yeah. All right, let's dig into the matchup. Saints and Falcons. We'll start as we always do here on the Saints Insider Podcast when the Saints have the ball. And Jeff, you mentioned this, or actually, Luke, it was you. You mentioned his stats the last 3 games. I went back farther all the way to December, counting the Lions game and the Panthers game, which obviously were not as good. But if you take Carr's December stats, they look pretty good. Over 73% completion. His rating's over 100, 11 touchdowns versus 3 interceptions, over 7 yards an attempt. The raw numbers, he hasn't thrown for a ton of yards because they've been ahead in a lot of those games. But obviously, and when the quarterback's playing well, that's emblematic of an offensive line that's doing its job. It's receivers doing their job. And the offense just kind of looks a lot more competent the last quarter of the season.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point about the offensive line. I think those guys have been playing a lot better. I think they're a big driver of the red zone success as well. Obviously, Derek's been playing a lot better. I think Derek's been playing more decisive football. But those big uglies up front have been protecting him, which has been especially important considering all the injuries that he's had to deal with. And they've been creating some lanes for the rushing attack. The Saints' running game is still not where it needs to be. That's kind of the whole identity of this team is to run the ball effectively. It's why they were so successful from 17 to 20. So it's 4 straight years they had a really, really good rushing attack. They had a 1-2 punch, and they thought they were getting that this year in Alvin and Jamal. Just hasn't worked out, but it's still been better in the back half of the season than it was in the front half. I think all those things start playing into Derek Carr's favor. And then Pete Carmichael brought it up yesterday, but they finally started using a little bit more of the play action, which just feels felt like an obvious answer. I think a lot of the really successful NFL offenses you see use a lot of play action, and when your quarterback is struggling, even if the run game doesn't have to be going great for play action to work. And the Saints have turned to it a little bit more, and I think they've had a lot of success with it. So, yeah, I think I feel pretty good about where Derek Carr is now. I feel a whole lot better about it than I did, November 27th or whenever.
Leaving Atlanta.
Yeah.
We talk about the running game, Dunk. The Saints, we've kind of forgotten in the fact that how well the Falcons ran the ball. The Saints had almost 200 yards rushing in that game as well. Taysom Hill had a big game. I mean, they're not going to have Alvin Kamara most likely. He's missed practice the last 2 days. We haven't seen Friday practice report yet, but there's an opportunity for the Saints to kind of lean on the run as well.
Yeah, I think it's going to be the plan. I mean, they were successful, and then they had to play catch-up. I think Jamal Williams, I think we'll probably see Kendre Miller, but I think you're going to see a lot of Taysom Hill, too. Historically, he's owned the Falcons. I'm pretty sure he's gained more yards, scored more touchdowns against that team than any other team in the league. So I would expect a heavy dose of him, and I think they're going to be fine. It's always better when you have time to game plan around a missing player, and the Saints have had all week. They know if they're going into this game without Kamara or not, and I'm sure they'll have a plan, a plan A and a plan B.
Taysom Hill's unofficial publicist bumps his fist at that news.
Yeah. I am. Look, you're not supposed to be a cheerleader in this business, but I do think that he's an awesome football player who deserves a little bit more time to shine out there.
What a catch he made against Tampa.
You kind of sit up in your seat when he's involved. I mean, he's just fun to watch.
Yeah, he is. He's just going beyond the whole novelty of him, being able to do all these things, which is really impressive. He is their most dynamic offensive player. You can make an argument for Chris Olave, but with all the different things Taysom Hill can do, and with his successes against Atlanta in his career, like Duncan just mentioned, I just think that this has to be a Taysom Hill game.
And I have a theory here. I wanted to throw it out here on the podcast. We'll see if y'all agree with me or not. But all right, I think the offensive line has been a big key because it's allowed the Saints to start incorporating the tight end back into the offense instead of having to keep Juwan Johnson in to chip and help like they were doing with Penning. He's now freed up to go downfield, and we're seeing the results of that. But the other thing that I think, and this is just my theory, I think not having Mike Thomas out there has actually helped Derek Carr. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but Mike Thomas is a demanding guy. He wants the ball, and I think Derek Carr, by nature, is kind of a pleaser. He wants to please Mike Thomas, and I think without that dynamic involved now, he's free to spread the ball around. And we've seen 2 of the last 3 games, I think he's completed balls to 10 different receivers. And I think he's not worried about force-feeding the ball to Mike Thomas. If you remember, the game Mike Thomas got hurt, the Vikings game, the week before was the Falcons game. In the Falcons game, Mike Thomas famously got 1 target, 0 catches, and was grousing behind the scenes about not getting the ball. So what happens the next week? The first 2 balls go to Mike Thomas. I mean, they're basically saying, we're going to get you the balls, stop complaining. That dynamic's removed now.
Yeah.
Mike Thomas obviously has an incentive-laden deal, so he needs balls. I mean, there's just all these other things that play into it. That's out of the equation now. I know he's a good player, but I think it's helped Derek Carr. Part of the reason why he's played better is he's not worried about that. He's just throwing to the open man.
Interesting. It was the Bears game, by the way, where Thomas did not have any targets, and then the next week against Minnesota. Yeah.
Okay, that's what.
And then he gets hurt, of course, on the second one. But Rod, I was going to bring that up. That first Falcons game, Mike Thomas was out. Chris Olave had a huge first half, then he goes out injured. Juwan Johnson left for a while. That was the game where the Saints didn't have any receivers. I mean, Lynn Bowden was out there. I think Keith Kirkwood caught a pass. Outside of Olave, because of the big first half, I think Taysom Hill was their leading receiver. I mean, they were sort of down to the bare bones, and they're going to have a lot more weapons this week.
Yeah, and I mean, Jeff mentioned Juwan, who I was going to bring up as well. I mean, we finally saw the Juwan Johnson game that we had been thinking we would see all season long last week, and I don't know what he was on the injury report yesterday.
He was limited yesterday with a chest injury.
Yeah. So, I mean, but if he's back, and I mean, they worked in Foster Moreau last week. He caught some passes. So, I mean, I think they're able to do a lot of things when they're healthy, and this team is, as far as their weapons, I think they have their weapons now, and I think you'll see some of those if they can't get the running game going without Alvin Kamara.
And let's not forget the Falcons game. They had massive struggles in the red zone earlier this year.
0 for 5 in the red zone.
And then Jimmy Graham. So, he's going to be a part of it because he was not active for that game. He's a part of this now. Yeah, I think he's been so big and instrumental in helping turn around those woes, even if it's just a play or 2 a game. I mean, those are the money plays that he's in on. So, they are a lot more versatile in their attack right now because they've got a lot of different guys they can turn to even without Mike Thomas in the lineup.
Without Mike Thomas and probably Alvin Kamara.
Probably Alvin, but but look, I think Alvin is a great player, but just looking at what he's done this season, it's not he has not put up an Alvin Kamara year. So I think if you're removing him out of the lineup, you still have Jamal Williams and Kendre Miller. They've had disappointing seasons, but I think they're both good players. And I think we could see those guys pick up the slack without Alvin in there. The biggest drop off is for me is pass catching out of the backfield. I mean, Alvin has 74 catches in 13 games this year. That's a huge part of his game. That's the biggest loss out of there. But I think the Saints have done some nice things where they've even motioned Chris Olave or Rashid Shaheed into the backfield and let him run some of those backfield routes. So I think they can scheme their way around it, and I don't think there's such a huge drop off. Just in terms of the skill position talent there, if he's not there.
Didn't Jamal had like a really nice catch last week on a screen? Remember, it kind of.
Yeah,
I think it was about a 16-yard gain. He can do it.
I think he was like the pass catching guy in Green Bay. His first stint. He's like their third down back, so he can do it.
Then there's
Kendrick Miller.
Adam Prentice factor. Let's not forget that.
And Kendrick Miller has, as disappointing as his rookie season is, he has 9 catches for 111 yards this year.
Kendrick Miller, go back to the preseason, who was in LA, made one of the better catches you'll ever see a running back make. Yeah. I mean, like on that downfield pass.
It's not Alvin. It's not Alvin. Alvin's very fluid as a pass catcher. I think Kendrick, you have to get him in space, but there's ability there, and there's run after the catch ability there that I think they can utilize. It's not the same. There is a drop off, but I just don't think it's this huge drop off that's going to kill their chances.
The Falcons have a pretty good defense, but I think we all feel the Saints are trending on offense to the point where that maybe they're close to where we thought they would be all year long, that they can find some solutions to this. So we'll flip things around. When the Falcons have the ball, again, Taylor Heineke is questionable, supposedly going to be a game-time decision. They're going to work him out Sunday morning in the Dome, see how the ankle feels. Otherwise, it could be Desmond Ridder. I don't know that it all that much matters. I mean, they got to stop the run. That's the big thing.
Yeah, I mean, talking to those players in the locker room all week, I mean, that's all they've really talked about is stopping the run. And, if they can do that, I mean, what was the number you said? 3 straight 200-yard games?
That's amazing. That's amazing.
That's pretty incredible. That was a time when you could even get 100 yards against the Saints. So for them to do that says a lot. But, I mean, I think, if they can stop the running game, I mean, it definitely makes everything easier for the Saints. So that's going to be the key.
That first meeting in Atlanta, not only did the Falcons have, 200, and I have it right here, it was way over 200. It was 228. Okay, so it wasn't quite as high as I thought, but they had 15 first downs rushing. The Saints have 5 times this year have held their opponent to less than 15 first downs total. The next time, I think Carolina had like 11 rushing first downs a couple weeks ago in the Dome when they couldn't pass the ball. But that's the only other time it's been close.
And I think
15 first downs.
And when you're talking about like that last drive that they had, where they basically I think they converted like a 3rd and 8 on the ground on that drive. Like their first third down, it was like a 3rd and long. They converted it, and they just kept running the ball right in the Saints' faces. They couldn't do anything about it. But like, I think the way to slow that down is if you're just counting on the Saints defense to just slow it down, like I don't think that's a winning strategy. Just based on recent history, based on what's happened this year, even outside of the Falcons game, I don't trust the Saints' run defense. But Atlanta plays very loose with the football. It doesn't matter who's playing quarterback, whether it's Ridder or Heineke. If you can get a couple of those turnovers and like build up an early cushion, I mean, it takes their ability to run the ball. Like they can't just stick with the running attack. So I think that to me, the turnovers are the biggest key in this because that could really swing what Atlanta is able to do and able to call offensively.
Yeah, I thought the Bears followed the blueprint perfectly. They got up on them. All of a sudden, Heineke's having to try and pass. He's throwing picks, and they're getting short fields, and they just kept building the lead. That's exactly the blueprint for the Saints this week.
Anything else on the Falcons offense that scares you? Drake London had a pretty big day the first time these teams played, Rod. But, I mean, you don't want to oversimplify things, but, man, you stop that run, you get out to a lead, then this becomes a lot easier.
I think it's just as simple as that for this team. And if they can do it, I mean, they'll
I think you'd have to factor Pitts in there a little bit just because the Saints have had such struggles with stopping the tight end.
But I mean,
the other tight end,
Jonnu Smith. I'd be more worried about Jonnu Smith than Kyle Pitts. Yeah. Kyle Pitts is a really talented football player who's done like absolutely nothing in this offense.
Which means he'll get like 150 yards.
I mean, he might, but like I mean, it's the same thing with Drake London. Like they have all these crazy talented outside skill position players they have no idea how to use, and they don't have a quarterback to get the ball to them. So like I mean, in a vacuum, yes, I'm worried about Kyle Pitts and Drake London, but just based on what we've seen this season, it's hard for me to really say they strike fear in anybody because they can't get them the ball.
Is there anything, because you mentioned, hey, the way to do this is to get the Falcons in chase mode and keep them from running it. But if that doesn't happen, schematically, effort, anything, I mean, what can the Saints do to defend the run better than they did. At least slow it down to the point where they're getting off the field.
I mean, they just need to keep up their level of play on the defensive front. I mean, I think it's as simple as that. If you go back to that first Falcons game, they were blowing them off the ball. There's a couple, Brian Baldinger does his Baldy's breakdowns, and he was highlighting the entire Falcons offensive line, and just like showing these highlights of like Nathan Shepard getting pushed 10 yards into the defensive backfield. Yeah, they need to play so much better up front. And frankly, this could be a game where Zach Bond, who's had like a nice little finish to the season here. I mean, maybe they can't use him. Maybe they can't put in the 230-pound edge guy because they need to be stout on the front. But I think it all starts with those guys. Like you can talk about scheme and effort all you want, but like those guys up front need to man up because like they got absolutely tossed around last time.
Yeah, they got to tackle well too because Robinson out in space.
Yeah.
It's very difficult. So they're gonna have to rally to the ball, have a bunch of guys around the ball. And Luke makes a good point. I mean, I think Robinson will fumble. He's put the ball on the ground a few times. So I think, but I don't think that'll be a problem in this game. Pursuit, effort, all that. I mean, everything's on the line. So I would be stunned if the Saints came out with not the energy and enthusiasm and effort they need.
Yeah.
They play so well when everything's on the line.
Well, yeah, I thought the same thing when you saw the Bucs last week. I mean, everything they had.
Yeah.
I'm sure they had the T-shirts and hats in the locker room, and they just looked like they didn't care.
Well, you see it, and you all know I'm a degenerate, so I'll talk from a gambling angle. Like you see every year these Week 18 games, and I mentioned this with the Bucs, where the betting line gets inflated to the team that needs the game. And what happens is it gets overinflated because everyone overemphasizes this. Oh, there's just no way Jacksonville can lose to Tennessee. Even though Trevor Lawrence is hurt or might not play, we're going to make them 7-point favorites. There's no way that they could lose that game. Well, the other team is full of professionals too. And yes, there is a way. Like the other team has guys playing for new contracts. They have coaches coaching for their jobs. I mean, like it's not just a given that because you need to win, you're going to find a way to win.
Didn't that happen last year? Was it Colts beat the Jags? Or
that was 2 years ago, I think. No, the Jags beat the Colts 2 years ago, and the Jags were not very good.
The Carson Wentz Colts era came to a
yeah, and it was like a game
end
where they had absolutely nothing to play for, and the other team had everything to play for, right?
And last year on Sunday Night Football, Lions beat the Packers. Lions had nothing to play for at that point. But the Packers could not get it done against a team that had nothing to. So you see this that factor gets overemphasized sometimes because the other team, it's not like they're just going to lay down. It's not like intensity enough is going to. If that was the case, then we would just the most intense team would win the Super Bowl every year. Like it just doesn't necessarily translate. So, Saints Insider Podcast is brought to you by Bank Plus. Please subscribe to the channel. Click the button below on the YouTube channel or on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We appreciate you. Quick note on special teams, Rashid Shaheed, Pro Bowl kick returner, which I think kind of caught us all a little bit off guard. But like if you think about the number of kicks that are actually returned in the NFL these days, you return one for a touchdown and you're kind of in that mix.
You're a Pro Bowler.
Yeah, I guess that's what it takes.
Yeah, well, I mean, all of his numbers are right up there with the league leaders.
Yeah.
So it makes complete sense to me. And he's a guy I would want to see in that type of environment. Like he's so explosive, dynamic. I'd want to see him there. So it makes complete sense to me.
Yeah, and I think the Falcons kicker is struggling a little bit right now. Am I
Young
wrong about
Hoku.
that?
I think he missed
Younghoe Koo.
Excuse me. Yeah.
I let it slide last time and I laughed about it afterwards, but I'm going to correct you this time.
Okay. Fair enough. Am I mispronouncing it or I have the name wrong?
Well, you said Younghoe.
You said it like it's spelled.
You said it like it's spelled.
Okay.
And
So it's the pronunciation.
it's funny
I've got
for
wrong.
certain people, but like,
Yeah. All right.
I think you should pronounce his name.
My apologies
Younghoe.
to the
We just bleeped
to
that
the
part
Koo
out.
family. Young Wei Koo. He did miss at least one kick last week in Chicago. It might have been two, but the weather wasn't very good.
Yeah,
so
it's kicking in Chicago,
Yeah, that's
like,
part
who
of
knows?
the problem. I think he'll be just fine in the Dome. He's one of the better kickers in the NFL. So, moving on, keys to the game. Besides pronouncing the kicker's name right, I'll throw one out from the first game. The red zone, like you just can't. The Saints have shown the ability to move the ball in this team. You got to finish it with points. So that's number one. You
And
guys got
I feel like
anything
they fixed those issues.
Since then,
I
it's
feel
gotten
like.
a lot better.
I just think the Saints need to get off to a good start again. I mean, last week they scored on the opening drive for the first time this season, and when that happens, I mean, things just are better for this team. And if they don't, and they're playing catch up and Atlanta's able to just run the ball, they're going to be in trouble. So I think the Saints need to get off to a fast start, get the crowd behind them, just get some momentum going early.
All right, I'm going to go turnovers. I mean, I think it's the most important stat in all of football, and it's something the Saints have actually done pretty well with this year, both in terms of ball security and in terms of forcing turnovers. Had 4 of them last week. That really ended up being the difference in the game once you talked about the Buccaneers kind of making a late comeback. So, like I said earlier, whether it's Ritter or Heineke, this Falcons offense plays loose with the football. They have a lot of fumbles this year. They have a lot of interceptions. I think if the Saints can make 1 or 2 plays where they're taking the ball away, even, especially if it's like deep in Atlanta territory, then you can start talking about building up a lead and taking away all the other things that Atlanta wants to do. So that to me, they need to kind of play up to the level they have been playing at this year and take the ball away. And I think if they do that, easy win.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to, I think we'll know early on, just watching this game, who wins the battle in the trenches. The Saints dominated the Bucs in that area last week. Both sides of the ball, they dominated up front. Conversely, in that first matchup in Atlanta, the Saints, as Luke pointed out, got their tails whipped in the trenches. I guarantee you that's been a point of emphasis for Dennis Allen and the staff all week. And you can watch it, as a fan in the stands or on TV, you can see that line of scrimmage. How is it moving? Is it moving forward or backward? Who's controlling it? I think that's going to determine who wins this game, because if the Saints can stop the run, like we said, I don't see how Atlanta, unless they've got a bunch of trick plays up their sleeve or something, I don't see how they're going to consistently move the ball on the Saints.
All right, prediction time. Situation is this. Luke Stradamus is, 13-3?
13-3.
13-3. Rod's right on his tail at 12-4. I've been awful. I'm 8-8. I keep being the odd man out on some of these picks and getting burned. And Dunk, you're 10-6. So solid performance.
Solid.
Matt's 5-3.
In the wild card hunt.
We're gonna start with Matt since he's not here. He's got the Saints winning 23-21. I think tight game. A lot of people expect that. Rod, what you got?
Let me explain my pick first of all.
Okay.
I'm locked into the worst I can finish is second among us, right? So the only way I can catch Luke is to pick whoever Luke didn't pick.
I like it.
So I picked the Falcons. If I was betting, I would pick the Saints. But since I'm trying to win this thing, or at least be tied for first, I did pick the Falcons to win 24-21, I think.
24-20.
24-20. I always one off, but 24-20. My explanation was, I just think the running game for the Falcons may be able to do what they've done. But I mean, again, if I was betting, I would pick the Saints. But so I don't know. We should put an asterisk by his pick or something.
No asterisks.
Okay. I'm just trying to catch Luke. That's all I'm trying to do.
Sometimes I like to be the odd man, and it hasn't worked out. I'm kind of glad that you did, though, because I think, look, would it surprise anyone if the Falcons won this?
No,
absolutely
of course not.
Absolutely.
We've watched 16 games of this, so no, I wouldn't surprise
honestly, that's probably feels right. If they did lose this game.
I almost picked the Falcons. I'll go next. Rod's game theory notwithstanding, I think they have a legitimate chance to win this game. I picked the Saints 17-16. It feels like in these sort of situations, Dennis Allen coaches even more conservatively than usual. Like you said, he wants to get out to a lead, put points on the board. Think of the way the first game was. They were trying not to take any chances, and then Jesse Bates makes a play. Cars pass a little bit off. All of a sudden, the game flips on its head, and the Saints were in trouble. Assuming that doesn't happen, and they haven't made a lot of mistakes lately. I think only one turnover in the last 3 or 4 weeks now, the interception in L.A. If the Saints can do that, they'll kind of control this game. Open the season with a 1-point win in the Dome, beating the Tennessee Titans 16-15. So I'll go 17-16 Saints to finish it off. Luke?
All right, I'm taking the Saints in this one, and I think my score was 27-23. And kind of like I explained earlier, I just feel like the way Derek Carr is playing quarterback right now is giving me a lot of confidence in this team going into this Week 18 game. And I don't have the same level of confidence in the Falcons' offense outside of the rushing attack. So I'm going to call my shot a little bit here. I'm predicting a deep touchdown for Rashid Shaheed. It's been a couple of weeks for him. I think they'll get one of those in this game, and I think that'll be enough to kind of elevate them to a win.
I like that.
Jeff, bring us home.
I like getting specific there.
Yeah, we're going to see how good I am at predicting things.
Okay.
Well, you're 13-3.
Taysom Hill has how many touchdowns?
Oh, no. Don't get me started.
All right, so I'm picking a blowout. Of course, I picked the Bucs, I think, to blow out the Saints last week. So obviously need to recover from that.
I've got some of my Kool-Aid from last week if you want it.
I do think it's going to be interesting to see if the Superdome officials show the Panthers score. I know when Peyton was coaching, he ordered them not to show in that game anything on the scoreboard. I think they'll probably won't unless Carolina gets up, like 2 or 3 scores and it looks like they're going to win. I think then they might put it up. But I'm kind of curious to see how that plays out. And the other thing I'm interested in this game is haven't they come out and said Arthur Smith is safe?
Don't think so.
I don't know.
Because I don't think he should be. And I don't know if his job is on the line in this game. I think it probably should be because I don't see a whole lot of reason that he should be safe. But I do think that's a factor in this game. If Arthur Blank's wanting to win, he's getting up there in age. I think they've got a good roster. They haven't really managed well. Obviously, Terry Fontenot, former Saints executive, is the general manager. That's something to watch on Black Monday if the Falcons lose this game and have another losing season.
So we got Falcons winning, low scoring, Saints win, kind of average score of Saints win or Saints blowout. And I think all 4 of those are
equally possible.
Very possible, and we wouldn't be shocked by any of those.
What about a Falcons blowout? No way pick that.
Nah, I don't see that.
I
don't see that.
They still get blown out. Yeah, they could get down 21-0 in that, and we'd all be writing their obituary, and then the fourth quarter's coming around, and we're all like,
oh, they almost.
It's 21-17. They've got the ball. Yeah. That does happen. Okay. To your point, Jeff, bonus prediction time. Saints, you say the Saints win. Do they get in the playoffs? And if so, via which route?
I think the only way they're going to get in is through the wild card. I don't see any way that Tampa loses that game. No, I don't think they're going to get in because I think there's too many. They need too many too many improbable things to happen. Basically, they're counting on 3 teams that are all favored to all basically lose, or at least 2 of them lose. Yeah. I just don't see that happening.
Luke,
no, I'd put it at like a 5% chance.
5%.
Yeah, it's very, very, very low. Because look, you're counting on the team that would have the number 1 pick if it didn't trade it away, and you're talking about another team that would have a top 5 pick in Arizona. And I think I feel pretty good about the Bears' chances, but the Packers are playing better lately, so no chance. No, it's like so unlikely. I'm not even really considering it right now.
All right, the NFC South can't stay out of its own way all year long. I'm calling it right now. The Carolina Panthers throw a drink on the season of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Oh, God.
Pull the upset in Charlotte. Saints win the NFC South.
Wow. So that means we put Saints hosting.
Saints would host most likely the Eagles in that scenario. Yeah.
Okay. No, I'm with Luke and Jeff. We've seen too much bad stuff this season to think that all of a sudden everything's going to come together on this final Sunday of the season for the Saints. So I'm saying no.
Think about what happens if Blake Grupe's 48-yard field goal goes through the uprights in Green Bay.
Changes everything. Well, maybe
Green Bay drives down. And
right, it's still a minute.
But still,
it's a minute 18
a lot of
time for them.
It's like it's a crazy thing about professional football, especially. You only get so many games, and 1 or 2 plays here or there really change the outcome of a season.
I think we all said that back in week 3 too. Like this is the type of game you're going to look back on and say, "Man, the Saints really could have used that one." They didn't get it. One more bonus prediction. Monday night national championship. The 2 of you guys, Jeff and Rod, were at the Sugar Bowl on Monday night and got to see Washington win. You going Michigan or Washington? Rod?
I'm going to take Michigan. I just don't know if I know Dylan Johnson for Washington, the running back. He got hurt on that last drive for Washington, and if he can't play, I think it just makes things a little different. But Michael Penix is really good, and he's going to give them a chance. But I'm going to pick Michigan. I just feel like it's kind of their year.
I love Washington. I love watching them play. I hope they win, but I think Michigan's much more physical and will take care of the Huskies.
Yeah, I learned my lesson last week telling everybody and their mother I thought Alabama was going to blow the doors off of Michigan. So I'll take Michigan too.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think this is their year, like Rod said. I think Jim Harbaugh rides off in the sunset into the NFL and gets that national title for Michigan. Long overdue for them, and they've been the best team all year. And I agree with Luke. Like I thought Alabama would win that game, and they whipped Alabama in the trenches. I mean, dominated them. I did not think that would happen. So I think they'll give Washington the same problems.
Can we do a bonus?
But yeah,
Do the
double
Harbaughs
bonus.
win the national title and the Super Bowl?
Yes, I think so. Who's going to beat Baltimore?
I
right
got
now?
San Francisco come back
Yeah,
to beat
San
Baltimore.
Francisco, yeah.
I got San Francisco win the Super Bowl. So,
Same.
but I did say Michigan at the beginning of the season was my national title pick, and I had the Saints at 9-8. So I'm just going to push back on the narrative that I'm terrible at this, and I'm 8-8 for the season. So
Let's not
don't
count
know.
out the Cowboys winning the Super Bowl either.
yeah, that could happen.
I don't
I had,
remember my
the-
national championship pick. I do remember Luke's national championship
Yeah,
pick.
I did too. I think he picked LSU.
The
Right?
LSU Tigers.
I have no idea who I picked.
They won the national championship
Ohio
of
State.
postseason honors.
They did.
How about that?
Hang your
Won the
hat on that.
ReliaQuest Bowl.
It's prestigious.
And with that said, it's time to get out of here on the Saints Insider podcast. We appreciate all of you tuning in. We will have the Saints Insider postgame show from the Superdome Sunday here on the same YouTube channel. And if the Saints win, we'll be kind of tracking those afternoon scores, or the Saints will have already won the NFC South. I'm telling you it's going to happen. And we'll either be looking forward to the playoffs or looking forward to the changes the Saints are going to make in the offseason. For Rod Walker, Luke Johnson, and Jeff Duncan, Norman Bell behind the glass, I'm Zach Ewing. Thanks for watching Saints Insider.
Give you a Kool-Aid bath after the game.